Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Living the Questions. I'm excited today to dive into kind of a deepening. I guess every episode is a little bit of a deepening of the other ones. This one is a deepening of the conversation we were having around knowing your no, your yes and your no in that way. And the question that I'm living into here is, what does it look like to embrace the freedom and overwhelm of nuance, um, especially for a person with overthinking tendencies? And what I mean by that is, what does it look like? You know, I guess the best way to say this is for me, is to describe what it is for me. So for me, I'm finding that I love getting up to the deep dive of things. That is what this podcast is. It is allowing the exploration to continue and deepen further. I love philosophizing. I love really, seeing things from all angles and getting a clearer picture in that way. Um, it sort of is like a never-ending pursuit of exploration and perspective and in that truth. And so like a pursuit of truth. And so it's curious to me because while it is so beautiful in so many ways, like when I listen to a song and the lyrics, I get to listen and read the lyrics and like lean further into the story, lean into the artist's perspective as best I can, or if they've shared their perspective, get to listen with a more discerning ear the next time, or discern and or really discern my own take from those lyrics and what does it elicit for me, what does it bring to the surface, how did the artist construct the song to be able to resonate with so many different people or so many different topics, not just one storyline, or took one storyline that impacted them and made it this bigger artistic piece that goes well beyond the core storyline. And to me, oh, I could geek out about that forever. I could look at it from every angle. I even love when artists go beyond the lyrics and actually introduce specific melodies that are meant to elicit feeling or have meaning due to the name of their chord or things that are beyond my knowledge as I'm not a musician. And yet I can research and hear musicians get so excited and geek out about those parts of the song and the depth they bring to the meaning. So I, even getting lost these first couple of minutes in just talking about lyrics and the deep dive that I love to go in. I even love deep diving about talking about deep diving about lyrics. And so to me, I love that part about myself. This lover of the depths of life, this lover of deeper meaning, this e- ever explorer of what it is to be and all the different ways that that can be viewed from all different angles. And sometimes that can be a tricky spot to to be in, both for my own internal system, which is a lot of what I want to really explore living into today, and for also relating. I've seen it come up before in different relationships of mine, and I've had reflected back to me like slight frustration of the fact that I will bring other perspectives before I will potentially pause to be with what, that person close to me has. Not always, but it tends to be something that my brain naturally does. It has just this world of possibility, of thought, of perspective, and sometimes I get so excited and I want to bring it. I feel like that's probably the equivalent of, bringing something that feels heavy to someone and they see it as a problem that needs to be solved and offer a solution, and that's not really what's being asked. What's needed probably in that moment is just to have, to have company in that, to be able to express where you're at and move through it in a space that feels comforting to your being, feels possible to be with what's coming up for you. And so as I look at it that way, if that is potentially how I'm meeting another sometimes when I bring in all of these beautiful perspectives, it is important to be in awareness around the beauty of it and discerning when best to utilize that sweet skill that I love about myself. And this other part of when I get up to it internally, where it can potentially be a detriment, is this aspect of the overthinking mind. I am so excited about this skill that I don't even know. It's relatively unconscious for me to just go right into looking at something from every angle. The the tricky part about that for me that I find is that it can overwhelm me sometimes. So, in the instance of saying no and setting boundaries, I was just reading today a post that somebody had shared about it being a disservice, saying that if it doesn't feel like a wholehearted yes, then it must be a no. And then talking a lot about how that can actually lead not, can lead us into a place of um of more like self-preservation in a way that's more hyper independent and swings the pendulum rather than being in the nuance of all that is potentially possible there, that there are other options rather than a wholehearted yes and a no, that there's an in between there that we get to be in. And there's so many more options than just this or that, which I love that. And so I loved leaning into this post. And also, what I noticed it brought up for me was anxiety in my system as I sat with it longer. And it wasn't what was being said, it was what internal conversation was happening for me as I read it, which was this is so much. Just, like sometimes it feels like it would be easier if there was one option or another. And there's a multitude of options. And in that moment, I started to think about all of the different things that I need, quote unquote, to think about in any instance. And it became anxiety in my body. It became overwhelm for me to think about nuance rather than that being an expression of freedom, which so many times it is. It breaks us out of the binary of this or that, of just yes or just no. There's a space in between there that we get to be in, and there's so much freedom there. There's a lot of beauty there. And there is overwhelm. And as a as a person who has a tendency to overthink sometimes, that skill that I love so much about myself of seeing things from all different perspectives starts to become overwhelm, starts to become this this aspect of myself where there's I, it is too much. I'm thinking about it too much. Now there's so many options on the table. And instead of the nuance being freeing, it actually feels really constricting. It feels enormous around me where there's no breathing room. It feels like if I don't yet know fully what a yes and a no feel like in my body, and I'm only at that first beginning ish stage of discovering what that feels like, I'm I'm like adding another element onto it that feels like, oh gosh, that's a lot now to bring that in, to bring that perspective in and have to see it from that angle. And I think what's interesting is even as I'm sharing this, I'm hearing that piece that I just shared here that feels deeper to me. That feels like that's what's going on. That the overwhelm maybe is 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 less about all of the options, and it is that, but it's more about the timing of it. It's more about, can I honor where I'm at right now and where I'm at. The overwhelm is telling me, I feel like I'm hearing right now, the overwhelm is telling me that I'm not ready yet to go into the nuance, that I'm still at this new stage of discovering what even a no sounds like. And to add another layer onto that of discernment is a lot, is asking a lot. And so, can I honor that congruently? I am in a space of needing to simplify right now. And while I do not want it to be a pendulum swing or a binary, I do need to simplify to offer myself the ability to understand the parameters of what I'm working with. Because how can I even discern if I don't have that? And so I think that's so interesting. I feel like I'm realizing now that the anxiety that came up reading that message was a feeling of needing to be in a different place than I actually was, and then what that communicates to me. And then that feels overwhelming because of course I'm not there. If I was, if I was there, I would be there, but I'm not there yet. So yeah, so to make myself feel almost like, yeah, like not good enough for not being there. And there's pressure to that, and then therefore anxiety. So that is so interesting. This is what living into the questions looks like, is that being in the question many times can help find, I'm living into the answer right now as as I'm having this solo cast conversation with you. That's so interesting. So yeah, so that feels really really revelatory, really clarifying to me. That's what I was up to there. And so yeah, nuance can be beautiful freedom, and it is overwhelm when I don't yet know my own boundaries, when I don't yet fully know those. And that takes that takes learning and its own form of discernment. And then I can bring the nuance in. And there's nuance even within that discernment. And yet I need to know those parameters to really dive into the freedom that nuance offers. Whew, I like that. I like that a lot. I feel like there's so much more that I'm going to be learning within this conversation. And there is such beauty in the freedom of discovering my congruence right now. Um, yeah, to be able to say that I'm just not there yet and I want to be there. And we've talked about this in past podcasts, past conversations on this podcast of, you can want to be somewhere and you're not yet. And that it does us a disservice. We're disconnected from ourselves if we keep thinking that that is where we are when it's actually just where we want to be. And the reconnect is reminding ourselves of where we actually are so that there is a way forward towards where we actually want to be. Yeah, what we want to be getting up to. Um, and so I think that that's what I'm seeing for myself. I'm seeing that I want to be in the space of freedom, of nuance in the discussion of honoring a no and honoring boundaries. And there's steps towards that. And right now, where I'm at is learning what my no is, learning what my boundaries are. It may mean that I lean harder into my no than I would like. It may mean that I don't lean as hard into my no as maybe would be in my best interest. Sometimes it may mean that I am in those spaces for, a bit longer. And that through that, I get to learn nuance. I get to learn when I feel like, oh, yeah, I really met myself there. Oh, yeah, I really honored that boundary. Oh, yeah, this discomfort isn't necessarily a no. It is, it is tension that's good for me to recognize and be with. It's teaching me this. And what is that? In the nuance between a yes and a no, what is that? And I think that that part is interesting, that I yeah, I can really stand for myself in that discussion of, oh, here is where I am, and we can only start from there. And I can't force it to be faster than it is. And I still will be in integrity with it. I will still be taking responsibility for the decisions that I make from here where I stand right now to where I want to be, where I want to get up to, or ultimately where I do get up to, because that might not be the same place. And it is, yeah, it is, that part's important. Like knowing this is like the self-trust piece. Like it is a growing in self-trust practice, I feel. It's that self-trust piece of knowing that even this I will do in integrity if I so choose. And for me, that's what I want to get up to. I want to be in integrity in this potentially unskilled space for me, where I'm growing skills in that discernment of what is a yes and what is a no for me, and then what is the nuance and living into that. Yeah, and knowing that I will take responsibility for my yeses, for my nos, for potentially missing the nuance in between that is actually the alignment, and the way forward, because there is not one right way. And, that can be the detriment of just the yes and the no. But the openness there of letting that become, rather than needing to to discover all the options at one time, which feels like, whew, like so much. And again, that feels inherently unboundaried. It feels, there's nothing, there's no container to hold that experience. And I feel like it is needed. It is needed to actually allow the self to open to new things, to learn new things, to have that like sacred structure, to have a sustainable structure that helps us grow, helps us navigate, helps us especially like feel through our emotional world, because so much of that gets brought up in these learning lessons of life. And so yeah, so it feels like self-trust, and in that, saying to self, I know I will take responsibility of the decisions I make. of the mistakes that potentially I step into, um, or are consequences of the decisions that I make. I I will, I remain open here to learning and to giving myself compassion, to be in compassionate curiosity with my journey, um, to not force or pressure or, be punitive to myself in this growing process, to have patience and know it takes time. It is a slow process to unfold, to learn all that's going on in our systems and to bring that forward in an honest way, and to get to a point of being able to integrate what we're learning, to learn it and then be able to integrate it and then move forward from that experience with that wisdom. um, that's the continued cycle, continued pattern that I see in my personal growth process. So, yeah, that's what it looks like to live into that question. That was a fun one to to verbally process over this conversation, this podcast, and feel like I got to really see things from a new perspective there. Which again is circling circling us back to the beginning of this podcast conversation, which is that part of me that I really enjoy so much. The, the explorer, the investigator of seeing things from all different perspectives. And how can I both honor her, that part of me, and be, be so like, honor that part of me and with the compassionate curiosity there, and and not choose overwhelm um or like needing to condense timelines or compress timelines, letting the present be the present. How can I use that skill with that in mind, to not overwhelm, to not overthink, to not over anything? To not overextend, to not feel like I need to be anywhere other than where I presently am, and then to move from there, to know that I won't always stay stagnant here, that I can make decisions that do move me forward um, and connect me with more and more aligned decisions, and that I won't know by just intellectualizing alone that that part is fun and it's so lovely to be in and it has merit. It's such a valuable skill in and of itself, and it alone is insufficient. It alone is not, it's not going to be, it isn't everything. And that part is important to remember, to value this and to bring other pieces in, and to know that to get even curious too with like, what is the heart of what I'm after in all of that? What do I want to be getting up to? Um, what am I like? What is that anxiety? What is that drive? What is that, um, fear of like rushing to force to make things faster, to get someplace faster? And what am I missing in that rush forward? Just a bunch of questions that I'm going to sit with. No need to answer them, but to live into them and to allow it to be lived into. Because I think the thing I was saying before that I didn't quite finish is, we learn through experience. I learned through getting to actually be present and and try. try this new skill, try to discern what my no is, and then we take a step beyond that. Whatever the thing that I'm practicing is, I'm not going to just learn it intellectually. It has to be put into practice. It is so important for it to be something that turns into an action, that turns into something that actually moves as well, beyond thought. And that's when we get to discover and see what aligns and what doesn't for us. And yeah, and that's the learning. That's like the meat and potatoes of learning, it feels like. So what I was going to say a fun question, but it feels like 14 questions came out of that, spidered off of that. Thank you for being here for that beautiful journey. I'm so curious what comes up for you as you listen to this and what your experience is with your own learning, unlearning, untangling journeys internally. What does that look like, and what does it look like to live it out and live into your questions and the questions that have come up for you through listening to this episode? I'm so excited to be in that conversation with you and to continue these conversations on this podcast in this season and beyond. Thank you for your time today and your beautiful heart for being here and listening in. And I look forward to the next conversation.